Welcome back to another episode of our CamTrackAR Masterclass. In the first episode, we took you through how to use our free virtual production studio app for iOS, CamTrackAR. We demonstrated some of the powerful features for on-set real-time previs, including chroma key and 3D model import, and in this tutorial, we're going to show you the next step, how to take that footage and composite it inside of HitFilm. You can find the project files in the description if you'd like to follow along. So let's get right to it. At the end of the last episode, I talked about getting the files from CamTrackAR off your iOS device. You can see the individual folders for each recorded take we did on set. There are two shots we're going to look at for this tutorial. The first involves adding a 3D model to the scene, and the second focuses on the green screen aspect. For this first shot, all I need to do is drag the HFCS file from my CamTrackAR folder into the media panel in HitFilm. This composite shot has all of the tracking data inside of it, so a camera will be created, as well as import the footage itself. If I scrub through here, you can see that the 3D grid is already aligned to our scene. The motion tracking is done, and I can straight away begin adding elements into my clip, and it's as simple as that. That's where CamTrackAR is really powerful. It does the motion tracking for you. We don't have to worry about it now. There are numerous different things you could do at this point, and they could all be their own VFX tutorials. One common thing to do when you have your scene fully 3D tracked is to add a 3D model. We have several tutorials on this that go into detail, and since that's not the focus of this masterclass, I'll just give an overview of that process. If you're using Express, you'll need the 3D model render pack. When you import your model, you'll have a variety of controls to dial in the textures and the way the materials react to light. We tend to use Sketchfab.com for high-quality 3D models, and mostly go with the GLTF format, but HitFilm also supports OBJ, FBX, 3ds, and LWO. Once your model is imported, we can drag it into the scene. A quick way to place it directly on the anchor from CamTrackAR is to parent the model to it, then reset the model's transform properties. You can then unparent it from the point. If the anchor point of the model is in the wrong place, you can change that in the transform properties. This is important to have it properly sitting on the floor. The model moves with the camera correctly, but it doesn't look too great. Select the model and go into the material properties. The environment map setting helps the metallic surfaces appear to reflect its surroundings, and ambient occlusion creates extra shadows in places like crevices and corners. The other important thing with compositing a 3D model is the lighting. HitFilm has a few different types of 3D lights, and I'll create a few to replicate the lighting on set, including the different colors. You can also place 2D effects on the model layer just like a picture or video, to further composite it into the scene. Remember to turn on motion blur when you're ready to export. Now let's focus on the green screen shot you've seen before. You can do the majority of this workflow in either HitFilm Pro or Express, but since I'm going to be using the custom light flares effect later, I'm going to do this in Pro. I'll follow the same process. Import the composite shot and the footage will come with it. I'll also import a rendered background created using Unreal Engine 4. This is made possible by importing the CamTrackAR FBX into Unreal. If you're not sure how to use the CamTrackAR data in other programs like Unreal and Blender, don't worry. We'll cover that in the next episode. The first thing we need to do is mask out any areas of the footage that aren't green screen, because they'll stay there even after we key out the color. Using the freehand mask tool, draw a shape around your subject. In the controls panel, activate keyframes for the path, position, rotation, and scale. Now go through your footage and create a rough garbage mat around the subject, adjusting the mask to always include them. This is not an exact roto of the person, just enough to remove anything that isn't green screen. Once the mask is finished, we can remove the green screen. I'll use the chroma key effect. If you're in Express and haven't purchased the add-on, you can use either the hue and RGB key or the color difference key. Use the eyedropper to select the green color and adjust the various controls to remove it. If the edge has a little bit of a halo, you can use the erode expand slider to push the edge in. The pre-blur slider can help if your edges are looking too crunchy, but they're all right here. Next, I'll add a spilled removal effect to get rid of the slight green cast, and then we can begin matching the color between the two plates. Compared to the snowy cold environment, Ollie looks quite warm here. First, a color temperature effect to cool him down. But this makes the shadows very blue, almost purple, so I'll use a hue saturation and lightness effect. I can go into the blue and magenta channels and turn down the saturation and even shift the hue to be a bit more cyan. To push the color in the right direction, I'll use a curves effect. Lowering the red channel will add cyan, and I'll add a curve in the green channel. I'm doing this by eye to match the color of the background. You can also use curves to brighten or darken the footage. In the final example, I added a lens flare in the distance. Since we already have the tracking data, this is super easy to do realistically. First, create a point. Change it from 2D to 3D. Use the controls in the viewer or position in the controls panel to move the point to where it would be in the 3D world. Now I'll create a plane and add the custom light flares effect to it. Right-click and change the blend mode to add or screen. Open up the options and choose a preset you like or make your own. I went with Dark of the Moon, which is inspired by the anamorphic look of the Transformers movies. In the hotspot position, set the center to 0, 0, and set it to use the point. The final grade layer is where the composite really comes together, because these effects get applied to the entire scene. I'll use the curves effect again to tweak the colors to be just right, then add some stylization effects like chromatic aberration, an anamorphic lens flare, bleach bypass to change the colors, lens dirt to add a bit more texture when the light hits the shot, as well as some film grain to make it look less CG. Obviously, the scene was composited with this background in mind, but if we wanted to swap it in with something like this Star Wars corridor, I would just have to make a few adjustments and tweaks to better fit the composite. Now that you've learned how to film a scene with CamTrackAR and then composite in HitFilm, you might be interested to learn how to use the data to work with other programs like Blender or Unreal Engine to create the 3D backgrounds that you saw in this video. We'll be covering that in the next tutorial, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so that you get notified of when that video goes live. If you have any questions, leave them down below, and we'll see you all in the next video.